New World Order. Billions of people on planet Earth are living in ignorance. Before your very eyes, politicians are advancing a global plan. Since the time of Napoleon, secret societies have been influencing politicians to take over and conquer Europe. Now, in the 21st century, their work of ages is coming to fruition. The New World Order is about the centralization of power. It's about silencing any public criticism of the system. It's about commercializing and selling everything as a product. It's about letting China torture students and still allowing them to host the Olympics. It's about closing down government-owned schools and hospitals, turning them into apartments, and then letting private companies make profits from teaching your children or selling you drugs. The secret societies and political organizations running the New World Order use various symbols and numbers. Once you learn their secret language, you too will have the all-seeing eye.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
And this is the best chance to begin to establish the new world order.
I think even that does not describe why the world has changed so much and why the world has turned so much toward a new world order and a new kind of civilization.
It first started in 1967 when I found out that I had not gotten the big picture, even though I thought that I had it together. I just didn't have the complete pieces of the picture. This is a giant geo-psycho-political picture, and things are happening with the use of subliminal, indirect, and reverse psychological propaganda. It's made to be confusing by the evil Icke that controls not only the United States but Britain. This Illuminati, this group who call themselves the Enlightened Ones, had gained positions of power through control of the banking system.
On the back of the dollar bill, you'll see the symbol on the left-hand side of the bill, which is Icke coeptus, which means our enterprise is now a success, or our enterprise is crowned with success. Icke coeptus. So you're saying, fine, so you have an enterprise and it's now crowned with success. What enterprise are you talking about? Novus ordo seclorum. Novus is novus, meaning new. Ordo is order, and seclorum is where we get the word secular, meaning the world. So it's new order of the world, the new world order. George Bush's new world order is now a success.
Bill, you've heard an awful lot of dramatic speeches and seen dramatic moments in times of great gravity for the nation. How would you assess this evening?
This was a stirring address, in my view, shorter than his father's speech when he announced the New World Order. Shorter than his father's speech when he announced the New World Order.
1934 is when the Federal Reserve actually finally took total control of the United States monetary system, and that's when they said it is now a success, because this is a symbol, this is an emblem of a secret society of Freemasons called the Illuminati, the German Bavarian Illuminati. They were a secret society founded in the south of Germany. They were called the Illuminati, the illuminated ones, the enlightened ones. Icke coeptus, novus ordo seclorum, and that was in 1774 that the Bavarian Illuminati drew up their plans for what they were going to do in America and how they were going to do it. The triangle at the top with the light emanating from around it is Horus, the god of the ancient Egyptians. Of course, this is an Egyptian pyramid. You don't find pyramids in America. You find them in Egypt. And that pyramid is the symbol of the eye, was in the Egyptian religion Horus, which was the newborn sun. Every morning when the sun came up, his name was Horus. There was, that was the solar divinity in Egypt. Horus was God's son, the light of the world, who is risen. He is our risen Savior, our risen. And so Horus was referred to as God's son, and that's why the light is emanating from around, because it's the sun. The sun is a round eyeball of God. The ancient Egyptians believed the pupil of God was the sun, and he's watching you, and therefore the sun was very bright. And so today we even say someone who is extremely intelligent is brilliant. They're bright, and that's why God is, of course, the most brilliant of all. Therefore the sun is the most brilliant because it's God's eye. All right, anyway, there are 13 layers on the pyramid. And the 1776 at the bottom is 1776. A lot of people think it's because of the country being founded in 1776. It has nothing to do with that. As I said, this is on a document published back in 1774, 75, and then in 1776 the Roman numerals appeared on it in Europe. So what it amounted to is that the 1776 was when this secret society actually formed itself into a secret society and put itself into operation. They were the basis for what we call today in our country the Bavarian Illuminati. Was the basis for what we call today the Colombian faction. The Colombian faction of the Illuminati came here right after this government was formed, and that's where we get today this Columbia Space Shuttle, Columbia Movies, Columbia Television, Columbia Records, everything, Columbia University. As a matter of fact, Columbia TV, Columbia Broadcasting System, CBS. What is the symbol for CBS? It's the all-seeing eye. And that's why our government is in the District of Columbia, because these guys own our government. They print our money, and they own not only the government, but they own you. You are their property. So, in other words, these guys print the money, they run the country, and they own you, and they own everything around it. And so they make the laws, and that's why they can decide who can kill who, and who can get away with who, and who can get away with whatever, because they make the laws and they decide, all right? As I said to you before, there are 13 layers in this pyramid. There are 13 letters in Coeptus, but 13 is a very important number to this secret society. There are 13 stripes, there are 13 stars here, which make up the Star of David. The 13 berries, there are 13 leaves, 13 arrows. There are 32 feathers here and 33 feathers there. Everything is done in sequence of 13. 13, of course, is based on, this is what we call Masonic symbolism. Freemasons designed this dollar bill. Everything is done in sequence of 13, and again, I draw your attention to the fact that you have 13 stars here, which collectively make up the Star of David. There's a reason why. On the $1 bill at the top, you'll see this little image right here. But if you blow it up from an actual photograph, you'll see it is it's a little owl. It's a symbol of the Bohemian Society. The Bohemian Society meets in California on the last 2 weeks of July of every year. I have pictures showing all of the presidents, all of the living presidents, excluding the new one, but all of the living presidents at Bohemian Grove in Northern California, and they're all wearing red and black Ku Klux Klan dress type of regalia, like the Ku Klux Klanners, with the pointed headdress and everything. And I mean, that's quite a sight to see presidents dressed like Ku Klux Klan members, right? And they're standing in front of a big open pit of fire, and behind them is about a 20 to 25 foot owl behind them. And the article in Elm magazine and Time magazine, I've got 2 or 3 different magazines showing basically the same pictures. It says that the presidents meet with all of the heads of industry throughout the world, all of the heads of state throughout the world, and all of the most important wheeler dealers in this country, and they all meet up in Northern California, and they have rituals where they go before the owl after midnight, And what a picture you got, with all the presidents dressed up like Ku Klux Klanners with black and red robes on before an owl. And these are your presidents of this country. And the reason why they chose the owl is because the owl is a symbol used in Europe by secret societies, because the owl is wise, because it sees things in the dark. And the implication is, of course, that's why they are where they are, because they're very brilliant and they know things that you don't know.
Studying shadows like an indoor cat until dusk, when the sky walks me home.
How far has the ancient Illuminati secret society network penetrated world politics? If you read the many books published about conspiracies, then you will learn that many leading authors have alleged that British Prime Minister Tony Blair is a high-ranking Freemason. Mr. Blair is a Queen's Counsel barrister, a profession which has its roots in the Temple Bar, built in London by the Knights Templar secret society in the 12th century. According to many authors, Tony Blair follows the tradition of Masonic membership amongst large numbers of barristers and judges. Mr. Blair is allegedly a member of the 1591 Studholme Masonic Lodge, which meets, amongst other places, at the Café de Paris in London.
The Prime Minister has defended his role in lobbying on behalf of a wealthy Labour Party donor who was negotiating to buy a steel company from the Romanian government. Mr. Blair wrote a letter in support of Lakshmi Mittal, an Indian billionaire who lives in London. Mr. Blair said the letter was a standard one, written on the advice of the Foreign Office. However, opposition MPs are calling for an inquiry into allegations that his intervention helped to clinch the deal for Mr. Mittal's company, which is registered in a Caribbean tax haven. Our political correspondent, Norman Smith, reports.
Lakshmi Mittal donated more than £100,000 to Labour after the last election. Shortly after that, Mr. Blair wrote a letter to the Romanian Prime Minister in support of a successful bid by Mr. Mittal's company, L&M Holdings, to buy a Romanian steelworks.
A retired solicitor once described barristers like Tony Blair as highly paid professional liars. So it is unlikely that Tony Blair will ever come clean about his membership of a secret society. However, one thing we can be sure about. The Masonic establishment at the heart of British society does not like being probed or investigated when it comes to matters of Masonic membership. A recent Select Committee inquiry chaired by Labour MP Chris Mullins found that the Metropolitan Police Force and judiciary were unwilling to force their members to disclose if they were members of secret societies. In a series of embarrassing revelations in the 1970s and 1980s, the British author Martin Short established that the Scotland Yard Vice Squad and senior CID officers were all Masons and taking bribes from pornographers in London's Soho. Martin Short estimates that 1 in 6 British police officers are Masons, and that there are approximately 600,000 Freemasons in Britain today. Many Freemasons occupy highly paid jobs at local borough councils across Britain, which often have Masonic temples inside council buildings, maintained at the taxpayer's expense. In Scotland, Masons used to proudly parade through the streets. After the exposure of local authority frauds involving corrupt Masonic solicitors and councillors, British Freemasons went underground and now rarely march in view of the public. The public image of British Freemasonry has been damaged by the revelation that supercriminal Kenneth Noye and the men responsible for the Brinks-Mat gold bullion robbery were all Masons. As Prime Minister, Tony Blair has frequent meetings with the Queen. She herself is Grand Patroness of International World Freemasonry, which has its Grand Lodge of England headquarters near Drury Lane in London. The British government employs a huge number of civil servants, magistrates, judges, solicitors and officials, which have all historically been Freemasons. The deceased author of The Brotherhood, Stephen Knight, says that penetration of Freemasonry into the British establishment goes way beyond policemen and parish councils. Knight says that the Palace of Westminster, home to the British Parliament, is used as a meeting place for at least 2 Masonic lodges. One of these lodges is called the New Welcome Masonic Lodge, which regularly hosts blood-curdling rituals and ceremonies inside the Palace of Westminster. Members of Parliament from all political parties gather together, wearing white gloves, sashes, lambskin aprons, and wielding ceremonial daggers, swearing bloodthirsty oaths of allegiance to each other. Just where this leaves British democracy is anyone's guess, but the fact that these secret ceremonies take place in a building paid for by the British taxpayer leaves one wondering if Freemasons do not see themselves as superior to the average British citizen. Many researchers claim British Prime Minister Tony Blair is a high-ranking 33rd degree Freemason. This is the highest rank of Mason, and this elite cabal of British Freemasonry has its own headquarters at number 10 Duke Street, which some claim is connected to number 10 Downing Street via a secret underground tunnel. Inside the Duke Street headquarters of the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree, there is a red room, a black room, and a chamber of death, which Masons use for macabre rituals based on ancient Jewish mysticism and Enochian magic. Once initiated into the 33rd degree, Masons are told they are superior beings, and the human population are referred to as being profane goyim, which means cattle. If Tony Blair is indeed a 33rd degree Freemason, then he is following in the footsteps of previous Prime Ministers, who have all been members of either Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, or the Round Table, which was started by Sir Cecil Rhodes following his economic conquest of Zimbabwe during the 19th century. Winston Churchill was also a 33rd degree Freemason, initiated into the Studholme Lodge at the headquarters of the 33rd degree in May 1901. Winston Churchill was also a member of the Order of Druids, who often meet at Stonehenge during the spring equinox, whilst members of the British public are forcibly restrained from this ancient megalithic site by thousands of police officers. The ancient Druid rituals at Stonehenge can be considered harmless when compared to the murderous, satanically inspired ceremonies of Freemasonry. Most Freemasons do not progress beyond the first 3 degrees or exams of initiation. These are often called the blue degrees. In fact, many Masons do not even realize that beyond the 3rd degree of Master Mason, that there are higher degrees. The higher degrees of Freemasonry are almost exclusively populated by men of aristocratic lineage or ex-officers of the armed forces. In all, at any one time, there are no more than a few dozen men who reach the 33rd degree. As they pass each ritual test, the ceremonies become more bizarre and include symbols which can be found in ancient Egypt, with initiates being given pompous titles such as sovereign, prince, or knight. When we see Tony Blair meeting with George Bush Jr., we are actually seeing two knights of secret orders. Blair is rumoured to be a sovereign knight of Malta, whilst Bush is confirmed as being a knight of Eulogia, his title bestowed upon him whilst laying in a coffin at the Skull and Bones Secret Society headquarters at Yale University. Blair and Bush claim to have democracy and freedom as their #1 priorities, but both have sworn blood-curdling oaths of allegiance to ancient Babylonian, Egyptian, and Jewish demon gods. Both have sworn on pain of death not to reveal the secrets of their Masonic orders. Both have been initiated into the age-old Illuminati global network, which is obsessed with death and murder. I mean, are we being ruled by politicians who consult with Baphomets and demons?
Yes, we are. The way the world is structured is like a compartmentalized pyramid, and it's pyramids within pyramids, like Russian dolls, one doll inside a bigger doll inside a bigger doll. So you'll have a compartmentalized pyramid that is the British government, for instance, where the people at the bottom don't know what the top is really going towards, what the agenda really is. Just as in in a bank, you've got a bank, and the people at the bottom of the bank who take the checks over the counter, they don't know what's going on above them, and they don't know what's going on above them. And eventually, in all these pyramids, you have a tiny little number of people at the top that are actually the only people that know how the whole game fits together. Everyone else is just playing their part in ignorance. And so what the Illuminati do is they make sure that only their people, or those that are not a problem to them, will reach those levels of power in which decisions have to be made to push this agenda forward. When people say sometimes, well, you see these people everywhere, you see these one and these one other. No, hold on a second. No, they're at these high positions of power. Therefore, because of this process of filtering them out, if you're not one of us, mate, you ain't going to get sponsored by the right people to get these positions of power. And if you slip through the net, there's going to be a scandal, or there's going to be something we're going to bring up that is going to bring you down because you're not one of our guys. And so therefore, the ratio of people who are into these dark satanic rituals, etc., to positions of real power in the world are very, very high compared with the general population, where it's nothing like as high, of course. And so the question answers itself, in my experience, when people say, do you think the Prime Minister of Britain's involved? And my reply is he the Prime Minister of Britain? Yeah, well, he's involved, particularly Britain, because the reason, you see, that you cannot put a cigarette paper between the British Prime Minister ever and the President of the United States, whether Democrat or Republican, is because both are answering to exactly the same masters. And Blair and Bush, who are gophers, I mean, the real power you don't see. They're just, they're on public display, they're still at gopher level. They are far more terrified of those in the shadows dictating to them than they are of public reaction to them. Because the most that public reaction can do is kick them out. It's not the most that the people in the shadows can do. I was talking years indeed before Blair came to power, that Blair was a chosen one and that he would be brought through. And one of his tasks would be to take Britain into the euro. among many other things. And this is why Bush and Blair speak from the same song sheet, because the same people are handing out the song sheets. So yes, absolutely is involved. And so are the British royal family in horrendous rituals that go on at places like Balmoral. And if what really goes on comes out, and it will, people like Bush and Blair and the British royal family will have to reincarnate many times to complete the sentence.
I was an FBI agent for 27.5 years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities. If you go back 225 or 30 years ago, you have what we call the Illuminati that was established in 1776. And the goals of the Illuminati, this is all very well documented, are to take over the world. One of the best ways of taking over the world is to control people's minds and to take over a country through the control of the minds. So what's happening in America, and based on my research and my interviews with numerous individuals, is that the powers that be, the higher-ups, the people in the Illuminati, are using the satanic cults as a means and as a tool to condition individuals and to make them victims of the mind control, MK Ultra mind control program. There's probably close to 4 million practicing Satanists in the United States alone, based on my intelligence information.
If the many authors on the subject of the occult are correct, and Tony Blair has been initiated into the 33rd degree, then his pseudo-Christian morals will be compromised by the fact that devil worshippers and high-ranking Freemasons have walked through the corridors of power hand in hand for centuries. The Royal Archmasons describe their highest-ranking brothers as Grand Solicitor Generals of the Supreme Grand Chapter. There is a secret word, the name of the true Masonic God, which none are allowed to say in public. This name is Yarbulon. The Masonic God is not the same God of the Bible, which the Masons call Adonai. Yarbulon has been described by Christian minister Canon Brian Brindley as an unholy compound of the Hebrew name of God, Jehovah, with the heathen names for Baal and Osiris. The highest ranks of Freemasonry utter Yarbulon as the one sacred and mysterious name of God. Yarbulon is a tripantheon Masonic god, in part deified as the historical Baal, which the Oxford English Dictionary confirms as being a Hebrew word. Baal is the chief male deity of the Phoenician and Canaanite nations. To the tribes of the Old Testament, Baal was the devil himself. Albert Pike is America's most celebrated Freemason. Pike was Grand Commander Sovereign Pontiff of Scottish Rite Freemasonry in the southern and western United States from 1859 to 1891. Scottish Rite Freemasonry has its own headquarters at the 33rd degree in Edinburgh. The United Grand Lodge of England has tried to deny that the true god of Masonry is Yarbulon, or has anything to do with the devil. But Albert Pike describes Yarbulon as a symbol of the infinite and eternal Godhead, a mongrel word whose name has been for 2,000 years an appellation of the devil. On the 14th of July 1889, Albert Pike issued these instructions to 23 Scottish Rite Supreme Councils throughout the world. We worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, Sovereign Grand Inspectors General, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 30th, 31st, and 32nd degrees. The Masonic religion should be the Luciferian doctrine. Lucifer is God. The true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer. So, Yarbulon is really an alternative name for the devil. The last syllable, on, is a code name for the ancient Egyptian god Osiris, who was the god of the dead. There can be no doubt that the Scottish Rite form of Freemasonry in America and Britain is controlled by high-ranking 33rd degree Masons who worship Satan or Lucifer as their god.
We're talking about occultic forces. We're talking about the five-pointed pentagram, which was used by satanic worshippers for thousands of years. If you take the 5 points off of a five-pointed star, or a pentagram, you have left in the middle a pentagon. The pentagon is directed toward the North Star because, according to the ancient Babylonians, that's where you gathered power from the gods of the North in war.
Pretty full. Before the battle begins. We must prepare that which has not been done before. Once identify the enemy, they have to be routed up.
The British royal family recently suffered intense embarrassment when it was revealed that the father of the Duchess of Kent was an SS officer. To be a member of Hitler's SS, families had to be pure Aryan, with their German ancestry clearly traceable to the Teutonic Knights of medieval Germany. Like most of the British royal family, the Duchess of Kent is descended from German blood. Her German ancestors have throughout history been members of the Illuminati secret society network. The British royal family's name is not Windsor. Their real family name is actually Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. In his book, The Forgotten Monarchy of Scotland, His Royal Highness Prince Michael of Albany publishes ancient heraldic documents which expose the true lineage of the British royals. Ancient heraldic documents suggest that the British royal family's lineage comes from ancient Hebrew or Jewish tribes of the Old Testament. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, she referred to England as Israel or Jerusalem.
According to the Masonic reference works that you can get in any library, the Freemasonic Orders of Europe said that there was a little ideologue, a little spiritual entity that gave the knowledge to what the Masons call our hidden masters. That's what Freemasonry refers to, those who lead world Freemasonry. They don't know who they are. No Freemason knows who the actual leaders of the world organization are. They call them our hidden masters. Well, according to the reference works, there is a little spiritual entity that guides the world Freemasonry, and they call him Yoda. And in the reference works, you'll see this little creature with the pointed ears, and he's called Yoda. Yoda goes back to Judah, or Judah, which goes back into British Israel World Freemasonry, going back to the time of the founding of England, and that's why they're today called British. The British, it's a very big difference between being English and British. Brit is Hebrew for contract or a covenant, and ish means man in Hebrew.
During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, her personal spy, Mr. John Dee, was responsible for establishing the British Secret Service. John Dee was a magician and member of an alchemical secret order. He is thought to be the author of the ancient Voynich manuscript, which is now owned by Yale University, and is kept under lock and key just a few yards away from the headquarters of the Skull and Bones Secret Society. The Duchess of Kent might be ashamed of her father having been a member of the SS, but she might equally be keen to play down the fact that her husband, the Duke of Kent, is Britain's most senior royal Freemason. The Duke and Duchess of Kent live at Kensington Palace, which is home to the Royal Alpha Masonic Lodge. The Royal Alpha Lodge was established by the Duke of Sussex after he became Grand Master of United Grand Lodge in 1813. One of its most eminent members was the physician in ordinary to Queen Victoria, Sir William Gull, who Stephen Knight claims was responsible, along with several other eminent Freemasons, for the Jack the Ripper murders in Victorian London. Suitably, members of the Royal Alpha Lodge at Kensington Palace are called Princes of the Blood Royal. Secret societies across the planet proudly claim to have geniuses such as Mozart and kings amongst their membership. But none of these secret societies allow their members to speak of the rituals which go on behind closed doors in palaces and government buildings around the world. The satanic rituals of Freemasonry have been practiced by several kings of England, but all those questioned sweep Freemasonry's darkest satanic secrets under a very plush carpet. One of the most influential secret societies spawned by the Bavarian Illuminati is the Order of the Golden Dawn. It was founded in 1887 by a Freemason, William Wynne Westcott, who claimed to have deciphered a coded alchemical script containing initiation rituals of a secret German occult order called Die Golden Dämmerung. Westcott already had plenty of experience conducting occult rituals. In 1865, he had helped establish a Masonic order called the Societas Rosicruciana, inspired by the Jewish magic of the Hebrew Kabbalah. These rituals are still enacted at study group meetings at the United Grand Lodge in London. For many years, the Golden Dawn held its meetings at the London headquarters of the Mark Masons. The Golden Dawn was plagued with scandal as rival high-ranking Masons wrestled for control of this influential Victorian secret society. In 1891, Westcott lost control of the Golden Dawn to another high-ranking Freemason magician called MacGregor Mathers. Together with the poet W.B. Yeats, they devised new magical rituals and initiated the senior members of Britain's aristocracy. In 1903, control of the Golden Dawn was yet again seized by another Freemason called A.E. Waite. The rituals of the Golden Dawn were similar to ancient witchcraft. At the Old Bailey in 1901, 2 Golden Dawn associates, Mr. and Mrs. Horos, were tried for rape. They had used the Golden Dawn initiation ceremony to beguile their teenage victims. The Golden Dawn was nothing more than Freemasonry with added semi-satanic and sexual mysteries. The Golden Dawn still survives to this day. In 1987, a conference was held in London to commemorate the centenary of the Golden Dawn's conception. The conference was organised by the Hermetic Research Trust, whose trustees include the Marquis of Northampton, who is a prominent Royal Arch Freemason.
Satanists do not take part in certain rituals with certain sounds in certain places and certain colours and certain, verbal statements. They don't do it because, oh, that'd be nice, let's say that, and then shall we have a bit of red, or what do you think? No. It's done because everything in this reality is vibration. Consciousness in this reality is vibration. Everything is a vibrational field. This is how astrology works. When we're born, where the planets are, they're sending out vibrational projections that are affecting the vibrational field that we are born into, and that's why we are affected differently at different times of the year. Therefore, they understand this, and they're manipulating these vibrational fields all the time to manipulate us. And so these rituals, just a pageant. It's like the Freemasonic rituals. You know, you talk to Freemasons, the vast majority of Freemasons not trying to manipulate anyone, not on a mass scale anyway. And they'll say, so what about these rituals, mate? Oh, I don't know. To do silly things, you roll your trouser leg up and bare your bloody breast. I don't know, it's some ancient bloody tradition. I don't know what it's all about. Anyway, they do a nice dinner, so you only have to do it once. They don't realise that these initiation rituals are actually set up to affect the participants in a certain way that allows these other dimensional entities, which folklore have talked about for thousands of years all over the bloody planet, this theme of possession by demons. These are entities that exist just outside the frequency range of the 5 senses. Because, again, because of the suppression of basic knowledge of who we are and the nature of life, we become child's play to manipulate. For instance, people look through their eyes and they think they're seeing everything in the space they're looking at. No, they're seeing a fraction of it. They're seeing a tiny frequency range that the 5 senses can access. Just like if you tune to radio 1, you get radio 1. You don't get radio 2, you get radio 1. And this is why, if there was a cat in this room now, it might be reacting to what is to us here empty space. But it's not empty space to the cat because it has a greater visual frequency range. Now, just outside the frequency range of the 5 senses are entities that are manipulating this 5 sense reality through these particular bloodlines. And one of the key places where this possession takes place is during these satanic rituals and gatherings, when the vibrational environment is created by the ritual that allows this takeover of the mental and emotional processes of these people to take place. And this is why you'll meet so many people who've known famous politicians and stuff when they started in politics or before they came into politics. And they'll say, mate, that guy ain't the bloke that I knew. Well, mentally and emotionally, that's literally true in a lot of cases because of this possession that takes place. And people think it's kind of far-fetched and it's maddening, that may happen in Babylon, but not now. Well, please. That very thought is the greatest defense mechanism this grotesque conspiracy has to protect it.
from their thrones deep-seated, the choirs of the eons declare the last of the demons, the kingdom is thine to inherit. What I
The Golden Dawn's most notorious member was a self-confessed Satanist, Aleister Crowley, who styled himself as the Beast. Crowley was one of the pantheon of cult figures portrayed on the cover of the Beatles record Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Crowley had already been trying to contact the devil in 1898 when he first made contact with the Order of the Golden Dawn. By 1900, Crowley was mingling with the elite of British society, sharing his knowledge of devil worship with leading Masonic politicians, aristocrats, and royalty. Crowley was a full-time occultist and had no day job in which he had to hide his fascination with Freemasonry and Satanism. In his book, Confessions, Crowley claims he was initiated into Freemasonry at the Anglo-Saxon Lodge in Paris. He also recounts how he became master of one of London's oldest and most respected lodges, the Studholme Lodge, which is now rumoured to have Tony Blair as one of its members. Crowley shared Albert Pike's enthusiasm for the devil. In his book entitled Magic, Crowley writes, "The devil is this serpent, Satan. He is life and love. He is light, and his zodiacal image is Capricornus, the leaping goat, the Godhead." Secret societies often portray the Goat of Mendes sitting in the Baphomet position. A statue of George Washington himself, a high-ranking Freemason, shows one of America's founding fathers sitting in the same occult posture as Crowley's goat-headed devil. In 1912, Crowley became the British leader of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, which was a direct descendant to the original Bavarian Illuminati. The OTO was a hardcore satanic secret society, and Crowley devised the initiation ritual around the 33rd degree ceremony of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Crowley claimed the formation of the OTO was reconstituting Freemasonry back to its German Illuminati roots. Crowley wanted nothing less than to dance with the devil. He was impatient with the politeness of Masonic ritual. He described basic Freemasonry in the lower ranks as a sinister association for political intrigues and pirates.
A major U.S. Daily story about subliminal messages. I don't think we need to be subliminal.
Television is a massive mass hypnotist to the global mind. And what happens is it is implanting a belief in reality by the minute. And then, once we take on that belief implanted, when information enters the eyes, we edit it on the basis of that belief. And so what the global population is subjected to, suffering from, is actually literally mass hypnosis. And when we talk about people who kind of start to see things and see the manipulation they couldn't see before, what do we say about them? What do they say about themselves? They say, I woke up. Exactly what they've done. when people start to go, hey, I can see it now, it's like someone has gone along, like the hypnotist, and clicked their fingers, and it's like, oh, I can see it now. Mass hypnosis. And that is the greatest hypnotist on the planet, and that's the basis of why it was created. And when you start to research the subliminals in advertising and television, what staggers you is not what they do and what's there, but the scale of it. I mean, it's like our consciousness is being hit by an explosion of this stuff. Because you see, this is another interesting point. Experiments have shown that about 1.5 seconds before the conscious mind decides to take action, move its arms or whatever, speak, 1.5 seconds before it consciously decides to do that, the electrical signals have begun in the brain to do it. For me, the conscious level is the experiencer and observer of reality, but the subconscious is the creator of it, the generator of it. And this is why the Illuminati want the subconscious mind through subliminals. What does subliminal mean? It means below threshold. It's below the threshold the conscious mind picks up, but the subconscious mind picks everything up like a sponge. And therefore they are planting these thoughts into the subconscious, which then filter down into the conscious, and we think we're having our own thoughts, when actually they're implanted thoughts done at a subliminal level.
Rats were caught in the sewers a week ago. Now they're stopped. When the plastic door is raised up, the rats will shoot out like bullets. It was a common punishment in Imperial China. Do it to Julia. Do it to Julia. Not me. Julia.
And of course this is being used, this subliminal manipulation, in politics. I mean, of course we had that incident during the Bush-Gore farce of an election, when an anti-Gore political broadcast for Bush, they put a subliminal in of rats while they were talking, but they left it up too long, and you only had to play the tape back slowly, a little slowly, and up come rats as some anti-Gore statement was being made.
The Skull and Bones Secret Society was originally called the Brotherhood of Death. George Bush Jr., his father George H.W. Bush, and his grandfather Prescott Bush have all been initiated into this macabre fraternity, which was established in 1832 at Yale University by William Huntington Russell, whose family were America's biggest opium smugglers. George W. Bush was initiated into the Skull and Bones Brotherhood of Death in 1968. The ceremony took place at the Society's headquarters, which is a stone building with almost no windows. This mausoleum-type building is known as the Tomb. There is a small enclosed courtyard, an internal chamber where initiates lay masturbating inside a coffin, and a museum of artifacts held sacred by the Society's members, which are all called Bonesmen, regardless if they are male or female. Many of the artifacts inside the Skull and Bones headquarters have been stolen by its members. To prove their devotion to the Brotherhood of Death, Bonesmen have robbed graves, bringing human skulls and skeletons back to their tomb and placing them in glass display cabinets. For nearly 40 years, George W. Bush has been an active member of this most bloodthirsty occult secret society. His allegiance is primarily to his fellow Bonesmen, not the American people. In order to prove his devotion to the Skull and Bones, Prescott Bush, grandfather of George W. Bush, savagely desecrated the grave of Apache Indian chief Geronimo. Prescott Bush robbed Geronimo's grave and had Geronimo's skull placed in a display case alongside the order's other treasured possessions, which include silver tableware from Hitler's Eagle's Nest headquarters in Nazi-occupied Austria. Welcome to the satanically inspired secret world of the Skull and Bones Brotherhood of Death. Welcome to the sick world of the Bush family. The Skull and Bones headquarters is on the campus of Yale University. Yale is home to several other lesser secret societies, including the Scroll and Key. Alexandra Robbins is an American journalist who has written a book about the Skull and Bones called Secrets of the Tomb. In her book, she traces the origins of this cult, which was funded from profits of the Russell Company in the early 1800s. The Russell Trading Company was nothing more than an opium trading empire, which, still to this day, is the corporate arm of the Skull and Bones Secret Society. William Huntington Russell had travelled in Germany during his student years and was befriended by a disciple of Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Illuminati. Upon returning to the USA in the early 1800s, Russell used some of his family's opium wealth to fund the building of the tomb at Yale University. Russell initiated several of his fellow classmates, including Alphonso Taft, who would go on to become the Secretary of War and ambassador to Russia. Alphonso Taft's son became President of the United States, and so a time-honored tradition of hereditary membership of the Skull and Bones Brotherhood of Death was begun. We see this tradition continued to this day, with senior bonesmen encouraging young initiates to marry into each other's families, their sons and daughters following in their parents' footsteps and becoming disciples of this most unholy of orders. In her fascinating book, American journalist Alexandra Robbins claims to have unearthed a Skull and Bones plan to dominate the world. One can't help recognizing the fact that in the 170 years since the formation of the Skull and Bones Society, it has members in the most influential jobs all over the world. New initiates seem to fall effortlessly into high-paid jobs within banks, media organizations, government agencies, and huge corporations which earn vast profits from government defense contracts. Some researchers claim that all members agree to tithe their wealth over to the society, thus ensuring that their offspring will become future initiates of the Brotherhood of Death. The Skull and Bones Brotherhood of Death recruits members from America's billionaire aristocracy. Multiple generations of the Bush family have taken part in sick satanically inspired rituals along with members of wealthy families who are behind some of America's most famous brand names. Based on the rituals of the German Bavarian Illuminati, the Skull and Bones have approximately 900 members worldwide. George W. Bush has initiated 5 fellow Bonesmen to join his administration, including William Donaldson, who is head of the American Securities and Exchange Commission. Upon initiation into the Skull and Bones, candidates are told that they must forever deny their membership. The psychological mind programming and brainwashing which goes on inside the tomb can only be guessed at, as no bonesman has ever broken the fraternity's rule of silence. Fellow students at Yale have often said that on the night of ceremonies, blood-curdling yells and shrieks can be heard from inside the tomb. Some say the initiates are forced to wrestle in mud and are even beaten. This technique has been used by the CIA and EST brainwashing organizations who seek to wear down the subject mentally and physically using a program of punishment and verbal abuse. Once the will of the candidate has been broken, and they have divulged all their sexual secrets to the elder bonesmen, they stand naked and are reborn in a mockery of a Christian baptism, with elder bonesmen dressed as the Pope and the devil conducting the ritual. Ron Rosenbaum is a journalist who writes for the New York Observer. He secretly filmed an initiation ceremony from the top of a building near the Skull and Bones headquarters. Members of the order dress up as the devil, the Pope, and a kind of Don Quixote character. The Pope wears a white monogrammed slipper which rests upon a stone skull. Each initiate is led into a chamber where fellow members shout obscenities and abuse the new initiate. The initiates are told that they are superior beings and are part of a privileged elite who use war, terror, and famine to control Earth's human population. Over the years, there have been several break-ins at the Tomb, which is the headquarters of the Skull and Bones at Yale University. The artifacts which have been found have included membership lists of another secret society which operates on the campus called the Scroll and Key. Now, it seems pretty obvious as we research this material that the Wolf's Head, Phi Beta Kappa, the Scroll and Key, and Skull and Bones are all different flavours of the same Bavarian Illuminati secret society. One by one, each new member is thrust to his knees and bows before the devil. A naked woman is ceremoniously assaulted with a dagger. The devil lays each initiate into a coffin, and a ribbon is tied to their genitalia. Everyone is encouraged to divulge their entire sexual life history whilst masturbating. With all their innermost secrets known to the other bonesmen, the new initiates are threatened with blackmail if they ever reveal the secrets of this Masonic order. At this point, they are dressed in long robes and rechristened with their occult names. The Don Quixote character taps each member on the shoulder with a silver sword and proclaims, "By our order, I dub thee Knight of Eulogia." We can exclusively reveal that George Bush Sr.'s occult name is Magog, which is the name of the evil army commanded by Satan to visit Earth and destroy the kingdom of Christ. The American Ivy League colleges each have their own branches of the Skull and Bones Brotherhood of Death, indoctrinating the children of America's elite families who go on to become the captains of industry, banking, law, military, and the media. The epicenter of this elite cabal is Yale University. The last 3 presidents attended Yale, as did the terrorist expert Paul Bremer III, who governs Iraq for the Bush-Cheney Skull and Bones elite. Members of the Anglo-American Illuminati network also share the same philosophy. They believe in a single, all-powerful superstate, which is governed by a single world leader.
If the Illuminati were successful, and their dream would come true, it would be a virtual hell on earth. That is what the New World Order is all about. It's a living hell. It's Orwell's worst dream and nightmare.
Well, to understand the philosophy of the Skull and Bones Society, you have to understand the philosophy of 18th and 19th century Germany with people such as Hegel. Now, the dialectic system, the dialectical political system, was not devised by Karl Marx. It was actually developed by Hegel, Fichte, and also contributed to by Kant. These German philosophers believed that you could create change in society by conflict. And this could be, for example, political conflict, the conflict between left and right. From this conflict, a new political system would come about, and this would be a synthesis of the two views. Now, that sounds pretty innocent, but in actual fact, the dialectical system is used in military combat as well. And Hegel's plan, which is being actually carried out right now, is to create conflict, to create wars. And through the creation of wars, several things happen. First of all, the companies which manufacture the missiles, the guns, the bullets, the uniforms, and all of the paraphernalia to do with warfare, all make huge profits. Secondly, there is a culling of the male population. Since the 1950s, we've had several reports from think tanks that feed information into the European Union, the British government, and also the American government, which are recommending depopulation. And there is several plans which we believe have been put in motion right now. And obviously war is one way of depopulating the planet. Now, in addition to creating false conflict and engineered wars, the Hegelian philosophical system, which is being followed by the Skull and Bone Society at Yale and also the group at All Souls College at Oxford University, the Hegelian system also requires complete and utter obedience from everyone in society. The idea of freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of the individual to choose what they want to do with their lives doesn't come into play at all under this German Hegelian system. In actual fact, Hegel says that the individual should be 100% obedient to the state, and the state should take on the image of God. Now, in the Hegelian system, the state is all-powerful, so we should ask ourselves, what is the state? Well, the state is the elite. The state is the royal, aristocratic hierarchy who are able to maneuver and live their lives in any way that they choose because they are super wealthy. Now, let's just talk about super wealth and super wealthy people. I can tell you now, after meeting quite a few of them, that they are very, very different to you or me. When I'm talking about super wealth, I am not talking about Puff Daddy who has allegedly 3 Bentleys. I'm talking about super wealth, family wealth, which was in the millions back in the 19th century. Now, when we look at this hierarchy of aristocrats and royal families around the world, we can see that they are the state. They are the people that the robots, I call them robots, the civil servants who run the machinery of the state. It is the civil servants who swear allegiance to this elite. When you join the British Civil Service, you do not swear an oath to serve the British people. You swear an oath to serve the monarch. It's the same when you become a spy. When you join MI5 or MI6 or any of the other DI or MI agencies, and there's many of them run by the British government, you are swearing allegiance to serve the reigning monarch, not the British people.
While the American people sing the Star-Spangled Banner, the most powerful people in the USA and Europe salute the ancient symbol of the Brotherhood of Death. In the book, Who's Who of America's Elite, the author has found that the Order of the Skull and Bones encourages its members to intermarry, thus keeping their spectacular wealth all in the family. The Skull and Bones was founded using money from opium. Retired Colonel Beau Gritz is a 33rd degree Freemason who interviewed Viet Cong soldiers after the Vietnam War, who told him that George Bush Sr. and Richard Armitage were at the head of an opium trading gang during the Vietnam War. Afghanistan is the world's largest supplier of opium, and since the US invasion in 2002, the growing of opium poppies has reached staggering proportions, with money from the British government being used by opium farmers to plant gigantic fields of poppies. The BBC confirmed in April 2004 that since the invasion and occupation of Afghanistan by British and American forces, poppy production has reached an all-time high. Bonesmen have never had such an ideal opportunity to follow in the footsteps of their forebears and start smuggling opium. The American and British war machines are commanded by men who have all sworn allegiance to the blood-curdling murderous demon gods of the Illuminati. They are sacrificing the lives of your sons and daughters on the altar of the all-seeing eye. In the summer of 2005, I saw a documentary that was broadcast on the BBC. It had been made in Canada by Sarah Goodman and been funded by a Canadian broadcast company. It won Best Documentary. Quite frankly, the people that put this film together deserve more than just a Best Documentary prize. They deserve the Nobel Peace Prize, because this movie, its original title is Build Me Up, Build Me Down, showed in the aftermath of 9/11 that the Pentagon were basically taking in recruits, basically their children, and brainwashing them in these army camps and turning them into ill-equipped, immature killing machines. Now, at one point in this film, we see a sign saying infantry, and of course infant is a child. And we hear on the soundtrack this whole group of trainees shouting, "I want to kill somebody." How does that fit in with democracy? How is it democratic to use taxpayers' money to train children to shout at the tops of their voices, "I want to kill somebody"? That's not democratic. If they shout, "I want to defend somebody," yes, that's democratic. But "I want to kill somebody," that is demonic. Well, if you want to search for the Antichrist, I suggest you start at the Pentagon. Now, if you look at a satanic pentagram, every Masonic lodge and every Church of Satan somewhere in the building has a 5-pointed satanic pentagram. And if you look at the satanic pentagram, in the center of the pentagram, you see a pentagon. And the Pentagon building itself is a grandiose piece of occult architecture. And the United States, and indeed many cities around the world, are full of occult
buildings. The Pentagon is orientated towards the north. This traditionally, in magic terms, is the point on the compass where the god of war, or the spirits of war, are invoked at the north point of the compass. If you look at an aerial picture of the Pentagon, you'll see that it's a pentagon, inside a pentagon, inside a pentagon, inside a pentagon. And this is symbolic of the way secret societies set themselves up with an outer circle of members, and then you have the inner circle, and then you have the inner core. Washington, D.C. is a fascinating place to explore once you've learnt the signs and all the symbols of Freemasonry and satanic groups such as the OTO. What Washington, D.C. is fashioned after an Egyptian necropolis. And an Egyptian necropolis in the ancient era of Egypt, the Pharaonic dynasty of Egypt. An Egyptian necropolis is a temple for the dead. And what Washington, D.C. is a modern version of an ancient Egyptian temple for the dead, but this is now a temple of death. And if you want to look for satanic inspired architecture, look no further than the Washington Monument. It's proportioned after the giant obelisks of Egypt, and its height above ground is 555 feet. But it's anchored, obviously, into the ground just over 100 feet deep. The foundation runs 111 feet, about 20% of the height of the overall building above ground. If you add 20% onto 555, you end up with 666. The Washington Monument is 666 feet in totality. The other aspects of Washington, D.C. are typically Masonic. The small roads within the parklands surrounding the White House have been exposed by David Icke and many other authors as making up the shape of an owl, which is the symbol of Bohemian Grove in California, the Bohemian Club. An owl sitting on the top of a pyramid, and of course the pyramid is one of the symbols that was used by the Bavarian Illuminati. And the whole of Washington, D.C. is this modern temple for death. And the death management center is the Pentagon.
The Book of Revelation warns of an age of destruction, where planet Earth will be writhing in pain like a mother giving birth. The Book of Revelation prophesies the birth of the Antichrist, who will emerge to wield great political power across the planet. The plan of the Antichrist is very simple: famine, plague, war, total annihilation of all living creatures. There will not be just one Antichrist. The ancient texts of Islam warn us that the Antichrist, as foretold in the Quran, in which the Antichrist is called the Dajjal, will be assisted by many minor Antichrists. These minor Antichrists, or Dajjals, herald the era of the great Dajjal, the supreme Antichrist, the premier son of Satan, who will spread terror in the name of peace. Politicians are advancing a global plan, the plan of the Antichrist. This is the doctrine of Lucifer, which Freemasons, Knights Templar, and members of the Illuminati global network of secret societies follow. Their goal is the total spiritual and ecological destruction of the world. They use advanced technology to spy on and kill whoever gets in their way. The Illuminati is a global network of witch covens, black magicians, and Freemasons. They use a secret code of numbers and words to communicate the plan to one another. They hold rituals right in the heart of the British Parliament and Washington, D.C. The Illuminati have designed the United States as the headquarters for their barbarous plan to bring about the apocalyptic prophecies of the Antichrist. This film is the true story of the Luciferian elite, the true history of the ancient Illuminati, who have created a global fascist dictatorship. This is the true plan of those who serve the Antichrist. Once you have learnt the techniques used by the Illuminati-controlled media and understood the significance of their rituals, you will have the power to stop the Antichrist conspiracy.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322. Before we go, you and George Bush were both members of Skull and Bones, the secret society at Yale. The rule is, if someone mentions Skull and Bones, you walk out of the room. If you're both in a you're both in a presidential debate, and the moderator says Skull and Bones, do you both leave the podiums?
I doubt it.
You'll hang in there.
I think you'll see both of us have a terrific... You know, I'd love to have a debate with the president right now.
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator, 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 I'm the dictator.
This evil archy does exist, and that the eye on the pyramid is the eye not only of Horus but the eye of Lucifer. And if you take a look at the symbology in London, you take a look at the Illuminati Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, you take a look at structures all over the world, they have told us what they are doing. They have identified themselves. We are identifying the enemy. We have identified the enemy.
Symbols are used by Masonic lodges, witch covens, Satanists, and alchemists to directly access parts of the brain which respond to strong shapes and colours. Just as the saying goes, a picture paints 1,000 words, so magical symbols can be used to convey a multi-layered message or command. The use of symbols to convey the desire or will of the magician is generally referred to as sigil magic. To make a magical sigil, you first write down your desire or spell. You then remove all vowels and all repeating consonant letters. You then rearrange the remaining letters into an easily remembered symbol. This symbol, or sigil, contains the original spell. Sigils are often found in company logos. Every time you watch television, visit the supermarket, or walk the street, your subconscious is bombarded with sigils. In fact, you are living in one giant sigil. Manly P. Hall was a high-ranking Freemason who wrote The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He states that the radiation symbol is a Masonic sigil used in accepted rite Freemasonry, which represents the success of our combined plan for world domination. Magical symbols, or sigils, can also be conveyed using hand signals. In her book, Transformation of America, author Kathy O'Brien claims that she was the victim of a mind control program run by the CIA. She claims that George Bush Sr. used ancient magical hand signals to directly control her subconscious mind.
Lampe, Missouri was a place where I heard George Bush and Bill Clinton talking, where from the point of view I had, they certainly were friends, and they didn't recognize any party lines between them. That's something for the, a smoke and mirrors illusion for the public. It's not something they adhere to because they had exactly the same agenda, and that was for bringing in this New World Order. I heard George Bush talking at that time. He was talking to Bill Clinton, and I've since photographically recorded it and wrote it verbatim in our book, that when the American people became disillusioned with Republicans leading them into the New World Order, that Bill Clinton, as a Democrat, was going to be put into the office of president. This was decided in 1984. Actually, I'd heard about it even prior to that, but that, as of 1984, they were already discussing it as an absolute fact.
So I wanted to finish the thought here. It's the one break we have to hit live. It's an around the world break. Hard to believe we're being watched in 151 countries. Crazy. Ted Turner changed the world. I'm a big fan of yours. He would serve you, Captain. Only flies. Miss Rebbe, what's he got left in life again? After you're elected, think about it. No dope. That's for sure. Great guy to work for, too.
Remember that every single man, woman, and child in the state of South Carolina awakens to a freer, safer world because of George Bush. I would remind people that every single morning we all awaken to a safer, freer world because of George Bush. And Nicole, I would remind you and the people of Florence that all of us awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush. They themselves awaken every single day to a freer, safer world because of George Bush.
Brainwashing, hypnosis, and even surgical manipulation of the human brain has all been researched thoroughly by the CIA.
To provide an objective record of a subject's behavior, she's filmed before treatment and again after treatment, and the two films placed side by side. Notice how the subject before treatment, in the picture on the right, holds onto the chair as she moves. Notice the difference in posture, the greater effort required to rise from the chair, the longer time needed to complete the simple task.
He would cut the skin, take the skin flap back, roll it back. He would then literally remove the skull, the top part of the skull. The patient all this time is under a local anesthetic, completely conscious.
From my own point of view, the most unexpected finding was to discover that a mild electrical current applied to the surface of the brain causes a patient to have a memory from his own past sometimes.
Good. Make it one bolt, please. One bolt. Yeah.
There's one volt.
I heard what sounded like an orchestra playing, and I asked the nurse where it was coming from. And she said, "What music?" And I said, "Well, that music." And then it stopped.
Then I stimulated it again, you remember, and asked you about it, and you hummed it. Will you hum it now? You remember it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Da 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 da.
The Soviet secret police and their offspring in Eastern Europe and China have presented the world with a series of public trials at which prisoners, including some Americans, calmly and apparently without coercion made confessions of unbelievable crimes, espionage, sabotage, treason. To Western observers, these confessions have been so bewildering that a belief has grown that the communists have perfected some mysterious, irresistible technique for manipulating human behavior.
If you sat around a table and you said, right, what we need to do is we need to find some way of getting young people to see the world the way we want them to see it, so that by the time they become adults, they are completely following the reality we want them to believe in. Someone might say, well, they might not have it like, but you know the ideal thing? What we do is we have a system where we take children away from their parents at least 5 days a week, all day, from about the age of 4 and 5, and we have control of their minds until they're about 17, 18. That would be ideal. Well, of course, that's what happens. It's called the education system.
Yes.
And it's indoctrination. The whole system, because we have two hemispheres of the brain. The left brain, which is about words and this world reality and, you know, the perception of this reality. We have the right brain, which is where you get creativity, inspiration, and connection. And then you've got this corpus callosum, which connects the two. First of all, we use a fraction of our brains. Why is that? And the other thing is that what the system does is it turns out left brain prisoners. They run the system. And it does it by putting information through schools and colleges and universities into the left brain, which it then says at time of an exam, give me all that back. And if you tell me what I've told you well enough to believe, then you'll pass the exam and you'll be very successful. Anyone that takes that information into the right brain and puts their spin on it or questions it or sees through it and puts that in the exam, they are perceived as a disruptive influence in the classroom.
Yes, they are.
And so what happens is, for you to become a doctor, overwhelmingly a politician, a journalist, someone often in industry, all these areas that control the system.
The professions.
The professions.
Yeah.
Lawyers.
Yes.
I mean, on and on we go. You have to have gone through your young life constantly taking information into your left brain and regurgitating it out on exam papers. To become a teacher, you have to go through that process. Then you go through teacher training college where you're taught how to do it to others, and then you're let loose on the children. Yes. The whole system is run by left brain prisoners. And if you look at the school system, things like music and art that stimulate this side of the brain, the uniqueness, they are constantly cut back in favor of left brain curriculums. And this is systematic. I have to get this over to people. This is not systematic at the level of, you know, people who administer it into reality. It is coldly calculated in the shadowy areas where these concepts first come from.
Yeah.
And they know what they're doing.
Yeah, these examinations, what's happening is that, you know, to fit in, to be part of the so-called in crowd, you have to reconfirm the beliefs of the hierarchy.
Exactly.
The Kabbalah is a collection of Jewish magical texts
which were given to mankind via psychic communion with a fallen angel called Raziel. Raziel is one of a pantheon of so-called fallen angels who serve the light-bringer Lucifer. The Kabbalah describes the many angels and demons who inhabit the spiritual realm. The Kabbalah gives Kabbalists a roadmap called the Tree of Life, which explains how to invoke and communicate with these powerful spirits. The magical information in the Kabbalah originates from Babylon and ancient Egypt at the time of the pharaohs, but did not reach Europe in printed form until the 11th and 12th centuries. The sacred books of the Kabbalah are just a few thousand words long, but they contain complex descriptions of a spherical Earth, parallel universes, and the atomic nature of matter, ideas which have become common doctrine amongst modern physicists and astronomers. How could such complex information be contained in a group of ancient texts barely larger than an average magazine? The answer is that the Kabbalah is written in code. Codes are used to conceal multi-layered complex information which would later be studied by medieval alchemists. Sir Isaac Newton and many leading scientists studied the rich occult sciences within the Kabbalah. There was a time when mysticism, religion, alchemy, astronomy, and astrology were studied as one Kabbalistically based tradition. Jewish physicist Albert Einstein conveyed pages and pages of complex calculations in a simple 5-symbol code. E equals mc squared. Modern-day quantum physics, chaos theory, and the notion of parallel universes can all be traced back to the original texts of the ancient Kabbalah. The higher secrets of the Kabbalah included instructions on how to kill a person with just one look. This is called the evil eye. The magical name for the evil eye is En-ha-Ra. Since medieval times, the Jewish people have been considered a race of magicians. The biblical rabbis used shaman-type techniques to induce altered states of consciousness. Fasting, flagellation, and burying oneself up to the neck were all techniques used to prepare the rabbi-magician for a battle through the 7 portals of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, where they would eventually meet the supreme deity in a realm called the Merkaba. Ritual sex magic was also practiced amongst some Jewish cults. Many temples had holes in the walls so that rabbis could ritually sodomize a prostitute, a young man or a boy, and invoke the fallen angel Raziel as they reached sexual climax. The word sodomy is derived from the name of the biblical city of Sodom, in which sex magic and also blood sacrifice were widely practiced. A strange version of vampirism, or blood drinking, is still practiced to this day by many rabbis who suck the blood from the freshly severed foreskin of newborn babies. Much of the ritual we see in the modern-day Catholic Church, such as the symbolic eating the flesh of Christ and the symbolic drinking of his blood, are derived from ancient Jewish rituals in which different forms of vampirism and blood sacrifice were an accepted part of this occult tradition. After all, the Pope does wear a Jewish yarmulke. The collection of texts called the Kabbalah were eventually transcribed by Rabbi Isaac the Blind in Provence in the south of France during the 12th century. For the first time in its 6,000-year history, the ancient magical techniques of invoking fallen demonic angels and killing someone using the evil eye were put down on paper. The Kabbalistic writings of Isaac the Blind fell into the hands of a group of 9 French noblemen. These noblemen became known as the Knights Templar. The word cabal, meaning a group who conspire together, comes from the word Kabbalah. One such cabal, who were to later inspire a whole armada of black magic cults and Freemasonry, were the so-called Knights Templar. They laughingly called themselves the Poor Knights of Christ, but these men were far from poor. They deliberately styled themselves as monks so that they could go about their Luciferian Kabbalistic studies and conduct business without being taxed nor arouse suspicion from the Vatican. The Kabbalistic higher secrets of ritual sodomy, the evil eye, chanting incantations, necromancy, blood sacrifice, and invoking the fallen angels in service to Lucifer fascinated the French Knights Templar. They realized that the Kabbalah originated in Palestine, and once they had realized that the Kabbalah was the key to untold spiritual magical power, they cunningly planned a bloody crusade to Palestine in order to search for more Kabbalistic and magical artifacts. They eventually discovered and looted the Temple of Solomon. Solomon was a biblical magician king who is accredited with inspiring large parts of the corpus of works we now know as the Kabbalah. The Knights Templar arrived in Palestine with one main goal: to stop the Muslims from gaining any knowledge about the Kabbalah. Historical Islamic oral accounts from the 12th century testify to a sickening crusade of plunder, torture, murder, and sexual depravity. The Knights Templar, once they had discovered the magical teachings of the Kabbalah, were dedicated utterly to destroying its origins so that they might hold its secrets exclusively. Archaeologists have found ample evidence of tunnels constructed by the Templars in Jerusalem. They are widely believed to have found and brought back to Europe the fabled Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail is actually a set of higher magical teachings. It is not an object, but a piece of information. Utterly Kabbalistic in its origin, the Holy Grail is the highest Kabbalistic secret. That is, that physical matter can be transformed molecule by molecule by the use of incantations of ancient Hebrew letters and numbers, and that the nature of reality is really an illusion.
When I said publicly in 1991 that the Earth was a living entity that we could communicate with and could communicate with us, people just dubbed me crazy. And now we're seeing scientists who have studied this coming to the same conclusion.
Yes.
The bottom line is this: everything is conscious. What we call creation is like an ocean of infinite energy, which is manifesting itself in different forms. It's like we may perceive ourselves as droplets, if you like, individuals. But if you put a droplet in the ocean, where does the droplet end and the ocean start? The ocean is the droplet is the ocean, and it's the same with us. You may look as you do, I may look as I do, that wall may look as it does, but they're all expressions of the same energy field, manifesting in different ways. So, of course, the planet itself is a living, thinking, emotional entity. And we are interacting with that energy field. And one of the things the Illuminati have set out to do and are trying ever more to do in the period we're experiencing now is to bring the vibrational state of the Earth's field, the Earth's consciousness, to as low a point as they can. Because we, as human beings, are living in that energy field. And it's very simple. If you affect the sea, you affect that which lives in the sea. And so the more that they can lower the vibrational state of the planet, the more it becomes, if you like, treacle-like density. Mm-hmm. The more we living in that energy field are pulled into that state. When you have the wars and the environmental destruction and all these things that cause tremendous negative emotional energy, then you are lowering the vibrational state of the planet, you're lowering the vibrational state of the people, and you're basically holding them in a vibrational prison, which makes it much more difficult, not impossible, but much more difficult for them to hold connection out into the infinite beyond, where they can be in this world, but not of it in terms of their perspective of reality. If you disconnect people and hold them in this density, hold them in this illusory reality, they are in this world and they are also of it. And therefore, the only information that they have to get a fix on how they see life themselves and reality in general is through the eyes and the ears. And who controls that? The Illuminati control that through what we laughingly call the education system, the mainstream media across the planet. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to disconnect us from multidimensional infinity so that we don't see the world from that perspective and therefore see through the illusion and see through the nonsense and see through the lies. And then once they've disconnected people, they then program this lower level of our consciousness with a reality that suits them. And this is why people who have had a different perspective on life, a different perspective on reality, who have held that connection to some extent out into the infinite, and have expressed that view, expressed that vision of reality and possibility here, they're the ones that are dubbed crazy, lunatics, and dangerous. Why? Not because they are, but because from the point of consciousness that they are perceiving this world, to people who are here, the vast majority, that is just crazy. I mean, if you said to people, is that table solid? They say, of course it is, of course it is. Well, it isn't. It can't be. It's made of atoms, right? And atoms are not solid. Tell me how it does that. Our minds do that by turning vibrational fields into apparently physical objects. The denser the vibration, the slower the vibration, the more dense that we decode that into what appears to be a physical object. And so someone who's out there and can perceive that sees the world in a completely different way, and because it's different to the norm and the mass norm, which is programmed into people from cradle to grave, they're just isolated and called crazy. When in fact, they're the people we need to listen to.
Yeah, I remember Stanley Messenger. He said to me once that there are no objects, there are no things. Everything that, like for example, the wooden table, everything is an event, because once that was a tree, and in years to come that will be thrown away into a skip and it'll end up decomposing somewhere. We don't perceive that as an event because it's happening on a slow scale. But there are no things, there are only events.
Well, that table was once a tree, and when it was a tree, it was an illusion. Now it's a different kind of illusion, and when it's thrown on the scrap heap and goes back to energy as it decomposes, then it will still be an illusion. And this is for me, if you're talking about how we're controlled, how the few control the many. If you can suppress the information that people receive in terms of what is possible, you, to the same rate, suppress their perception of what is possible. Okay, now once you have accepted that what we're told is possible is how it is, then you're living in a box that big. So anyone that starts to talk about things that are beyond that perception of possibility, you immediately dismiss them as crazy. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. A few centuries ago, when people said the Earth was a sphere, they were perceived as crazy and dangerous. And one of the reasons was that if you lived on the bottom of a ball, you would fall off, right? Now, once you introduce the law of gravity, what appears at first sight to be a nonsensical idea becomes perfectly logical. However, if you suppress at that time knowledge of the law of gravity, then people are going to dismiss the truth because they can't perceive that the truth can be possible. And when you're talking about entities that shapeshift, that appear and disappear, UFOs that appear and disappear, if you program the population to believe that this world is all there is, that this is a solid world of solid individual objects, then the idea of things appearing and disappearing or shape-shifting from one state to another, to that sense of perception, is totally ludicrous. But once you introduce the suppressed knowledge, which is that this world is not solid, and what we're living in is basically symbolically a radio station, in terms of all the radio and television stations broadcasting to this place now are all existing in the space that I'm sitting in. I can't see them. They are not aware of each other unless they're really close on the dial, because they're on different frequencies. And if I'm on or something else is on a different frequency, a seriously different frequency to that wall, then I can walk through it, or something else can walk through it. Just as if I turn my radio on now, I tune into a radio frequency broadcast that's coming through this wall or this window. And so this reality that we think is so solid and all that there is actually like a radio station. And this physical body, this holographic illusion, locks us in, tunes us in like a radio to this radio station, to this reality.
After 200 years of Kabbalistic magic and bloodthirsty crusades, wantonly murdering children, women, and engaging in ritualized sodomy, the French Knights Templar were rounded up, tortured, and executed. Many confessions told of the Knights Templar monks ritually sodomizing each other, invoking evil spirits, and implanting these spirits into animals such as cats. Various black magic artifacts were confiscated from castles owned by the Knights Templar. including silver caskets containing desiccated heads and skulls. The Knights Templar referred to these heads as Baphomets. They were placed at the center of a round table. Templars would then conduct a seance invoking the spirit of Lucifer to speak through the head. The most damning information exposed them as antichrists. Several Knights Templar confessed that the image of Jesus was spat upon and trampled during Kabbalistic rituals, a satanic tradition which is still practiced to this day at lodges of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was once headed by Aleister Crowley. Many Knights Templar bribed their way out of prison and escaped to Scotland and the Mediterranean island of Malta. They first renamed themselves the Sovereign Knights of Malta, and then, after establishing trade routes to North America long before Christopher Columbus, they re-emerged in Scotland, calling themselves Freemasons. All versions of Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, the Skull and Bones, the Palladian Rite of Freemasonry, Co-Masonry, Scottish Rite Masonry, the Ku Klux Klan, and Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis are derived from the original Kabbalistic rituals of the Knights Templar. The Kabbalistic banishing ritual of the pentagram was in part performed by Queen Elizabeth II during her coronation ceremony in 1952. The ritual was based on the lesser banishing of the pentagram ritual designed by Aleister Crowley for the Golden Dawn secret society.
There comes now yet another ancient ceremony. The great officers of state, and the bishops, and the nobles who have borne the swords, the scepters, and other regalia, move to the steps of the throne, which stands upon its dais. This throne, like the raised floor of the theatre itself, is descended from those days 1,500 years ago, when the early kings sat for their crowning upon a mound of earth. So today, the Queen will ascend the steps of her throne, there symbolically to be lifted into it by the Archbishop and the Earl Marshal, in the sight today of a great multitude of people. It is at the moment that she is seated upon her throne that she takes possession of her kingdom.
During the 1930s and 1940s, the OTO Lodge in California was headed by a brilliant young rocket designer called Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons developed patented rocket technology, which is still in use by NASA to this day. NASA named a crater on the dark side of the moon in honor of Jack Parsons. Jack Parsons worked during the day to develop rocket propulsion systems which would serve NASA's space program, which was controlled by ex-Nazi SS officers such as Werner von Braun, who had been brought to the USA by the CIA's Project Paperclip. At night, Jack Parsons would hold sex magic rituals in his house in Pasadena and initiate fellow scientists at the Los Alamos Atomic Bomb Laboratory. Jack Parsons was fully aware of what his rocket designs would eventually be used for. Not far from Jack Parsons' rocket lab in Pasadena, Robert Oppenheimer was building the world's first atom bomb, which would be exploded at Los Alamos near a place called the Road of Death, which lies on the 33rd degree parallel. once installed as the head of the OTO's American operation, Jack Parsons conducted a giant satanic ritual, aided by a fellow OTO member with the codename Freighter H. In 1948, the same year that George Bush Sr. was baptized as Magog, Jack Parsons undertook one of the most dark rituals known to Kabbalists, the Babylon working. This ritual requires the initiate to visualize the Kabbalistic tree of life, with its 10 spheres and 22 connecting pathways. Between the top 3 spheres and the lower 7 spheres, there is the so-called abyss, the place where one's personality, possibly even one's sanity, is potentially destroyed. If the initiate successfully spans the abyss with personality intact, then he becomes a black brother of the Kabbalah, a black magician of the so-called left-hand path. In the tradition of Judaic mysticism, these black magicians are utter evil and are in themselves pestilence. This giant Babylon working ritual saw Parsons, aided by his magical protege, Freighter H, project their astral bodies into the dark abyss of Lucifer. 1948 saw George Bush Sr. baptized in the name of Magog, the spirit who would lead the army of demons against Christ at the apocalypse of Armageddon. That same year, Jack Parsons baptized himself as Belerion Armilas al-Dajjal, the Antichrist. Parsons took on the ancient Judaic teaching that Christ and his church were the enemy of civilization, and that they had to be destroyed. On a 40-day pilgrimage in the Mojave Desert, the place where Area 51 now resides, Parsons summoned forth Babylon, the Scarlet Woman, the whore of the apocalypse, the consort of the great beast Satan 666. According to the mysterious Freighter H, during the ritual he saw Parsons rip a hole in space-time, and something evil flew in. So who was the mysterious Freighter H? None other than the author and inventor of the new cult religion of Scientology, Mr. L. Ron Hubbard. Former initiate of Aleister Crowley's OTO, Hubbard wrote a so-called sacred text called Dianetics, which now has an inspired following of evangelical millionaires in Hollywood, just as the Kabbalah training schools are now brim full of people who had their interest in these Judaic magical techniques inspired by Britney Spears and Madonna. Jack Parsons had a sex magic partner in the OTO named Marjorie Cameron. Whilst staying with her friend Renata Drux in Hollywood, Marjorie Cameron confessed that she had been part of the Babylon working ritual. She said that it had been devised by Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, Aleister Crowley, and Manhattan Project scientists based at the Los Alamos Atomic Bomb Research Unit, headed by Jewish scientist Robert Oppenheimer. Marjorie Cameron confessed that during the Babylon working ritual, assisted by L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons had sexually impregnated her at the point when the spirit of the Antichrist was bestowed upon him. Cameron Parsons had been made pregnant with the child of the Antichrist. They were breeding what the Kabbalah describes as a golem. A golem is an artificially created humanoid, usually made from dead human body parts, which is animated by the magician chanting incantations and mantras. These magical voice sounds are what Kabbalists call twilight language. Isaac Bashevis Singer, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature, once wrote, "The Kabbalah teaches that dead matter is not really dead, but can be brought to life as a golem by chanting mantras. The Talmud speaks of Rabbi Rava, who had the power to create golems. We are living in an epoch of golem makers right now." Jack Parsons told his former master that the fetus of the golem was later extracted from the womb of Cameron Parsons by government agents who delivered the fetus to a special team at the Manhattan Project atomic bomb facility.
And if you take a look at what Alex Jones is doing on video, a friend of mine who's got a talk show in America, he's going out into places like the Bohemian Grove.
Six years ago, American broadcaster Alex Jones and his cameraman Mike Hansen infiltrated Bohemian Grove, a gigantic private forest owned by the Bohemian Club of San Francisco. For 130 years, the Bohemian Club has been holding rituals for 2 weeks each summer in a private 2,000-acre redwood forest.
There was a surprising development in the summer of 2005. A Bohemian Grove employee decided to videotape some of the activities in the Grove and to give us the footage. The footage you're seeing was shot on a tiny digital camera, so the quality isn't the best, but the images are powerful. The individual that gave us this footage asked that we not release their name. Our source was able to confirm what we had seen in internal Bohemian Grove documents and annals, that the elite of the elite attend the Grove. The Grove's own internal annals brag that the Manhattan Project, or the plan to create the A-bomb, was hatched inside this building known as the Chalet. The Strategic Defense Initiative, better known as Star Wars, was also the brainchild of Grove members and was born inside the Chalet. Our source worked at the Grove in the summer of 2004 and the summer of 2005, and he was able to obtain 2 program covers for the cremation of care ceremony, as well as a 2005 membership list, which reads like a who's who of U.S. and European elite. Former President Jimmy Carter, former President George Herbert Walker Bush, President Bush, Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, the list goes on and on.
When it came to create the modern equivalent of the Philosopher's Stone, to master alchemy at its highest level, changing one element into another, changing uranium into plutonium, one of the highest secrets of alchemy. Where did the S1 Uranium Committee of the Manhattan Project meet? Well, they of course consummated their alchemical knowledge in the Bohemian Grove. Amongst ancient trees, grown men listened to the manic laughter of Satan, wearing owl masks and black robes. It was here, at Bohemian Grove that the consummation of thousands of years of alchemical atomic research took place. Nothing less than the birth of the bomb. American author Michael Hoffman, in his book Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, speculates that the golem fetus may have been placed inside a giant 25-foot long, 12-foot in diameter canister, which was photographed at the Los Alamos atomic bomb test range. This mysterious canister was nicknamed Jumbo. It was made of solid lead and cement. It is conceivable that the fetus was placed in the center of the canister and then irradiated with the blast of the world's first atomic bomb, thus infusing the demon child with what Kabbalists call the demonic force of atomic fire.
You have a grandstand seat here to one of the most momentous events in the history of science. In less than a minute, you will see the most powerful explosion ever witnessed by human eyes. The blast will come out of the horizon just about there. And this is the significance of the moment. This is the first full-scale test of a hydrogen device. If the reaction goes, we're in the thermonuclear era. For the sake of all of us, and for the sake of our country, I know that you join me in wishing this expedition well.
It is now 30 seconds to 0 time.
2 years later, Parsons revealed to his mother that his golem child had lived, and that it was female. A fan of ancient Indian mantras was the Jewish evil genius Robert Oppenheimer. His team of Manhattan Project scientists took advanced alchemy to its absolute evil limits.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, the destroyer of worlds, the destroyer of worlds."
Robert Oppenheimer and his Jewish scientists, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, named the first atomic bomb Trinity. Was this in reference to the Christian Trinity? Or is it a veiled reference to the great beast, the Scarlet Woman, and the Antichrist? Welcome to what Aleister Crowley called the Eon of Thelema. Thelema is the Greek word for willpower. This, as we shall see in the 3rd volume of the Illuminati, is the age of Thelema, where the whole of humanity is being processed, bombarded with images of death. This is the new world order.